Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage Dr. Karen Stout.
Good morning. So before we get to our student panel this morning, I have a couple of call-outs. I want to start with giving a special shout out to the Hawaii Community College who came to Dream this year with 60 team members from the 7 colleges and the University of Hawaii. Where are you? Woo! Thank you. We also have colleagues from the College Promise National Advisory Board who have co-joined their national meeting with the Dream Conference this year. And this is, a little bit of a coincidence in some respects, but planned as well. California is a perfect place to have this meeting. There are nearly 60 Promise programs in California. Yesterday, we had a presentation about Promise programs across the country. And I learned from a very well-crafted slide that California is a perfect place for Promise programs to be incubated because there are conducive policy conditions in California and conducive community conditions to foster, incubate, and launch Promise programs. And of course, we're right here in the city of San Francisco that about 10 days ago announced a Promise program. And that we should give San Francisco another round of applause for that. The work of the Promise program and the Promise programs across the country are linked very closely to the work of Achieving the Dream. We talked in the opening plenary about the importance of looking at a new access and success imperative in this country. And I think the Promise program is central to that. Promise programs have the opportunity to mobilize really interesting collective impact strategies in communities where the community college can be at the center of leading a strategy to increase opportunities and access to community colleges as well as post-secondary education. And then those models blended with strong student support systems like those that we're crafting at Achieving the Dream, I think make a powerful tandem. So I want to thank the College Promise Board for picking San Francisco and Dream to have host this board meeting this afternoon. And I want to ask Martha Cantor, the Executive Director of Civic Nation and the former Undersecretary of Education, to stand, and the Promise board members that are here, so we can thank you for joining us this morning. And we're glad you're here to hear the student stories. It's a special treat at Dream. I also want to take a moment to invite Dr. Francois Strydom of the South African delegation to the stage. He's going to offer a special recognition, and we're honored again to have the delegation join us at Dream, and we thank again the Kresge Foundation for making that possible. Francois.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. As this morning is about the students, I wanted to give a shout out to Lechaba Muku, one of our student delegates that's part of us. Lechaba, if you could stand up. I think as it has been, it's the biggest South African delegation in several years. I've been coming for about 5 years and have been inspired every year at Dream. This year there's 37, not 73, 37 of us. And I wanted to share just 3 points or 3 observations. Last night we had a debrief session talking about everything that we as colleagues have learned from you. And I just like to make these 3 comments. I think several of us commented on how impressive the leadership at your colleges are in their commitment to student success, and how impressive you as a group are if we just look at how well all sessions are attended. So I think that's something really special. we were also inspired by the depth of engagement around what the circumstances of your students are in community colleges. Many of the presentations talking about poverty, financial assistance and support that students need to get, a topic which is incredibly relevant for South Africans, as many of our students face these challenges, and there is a very robust debate and process in South Africa around how students are funded and supported. And then finally, the enthusiasm around how to use data to empower students, faculty, and staff at your institutions is energizing, to say the least. So thank you very much that we could be here with you. Thank you to Kresge for making it possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois. So now for the special event. I hope you have had an opportunity to not just listen to the students when they've come to the stage during the plenaries to share their stories, but to also interact with them as they have been part of many of our sessions over the week. They've shared their stories in many of the plenaries as well, and some of the spotlight sessions. And we had a wonderful opportunity last night to interact with them again, and it was great to see them. I saw somebody in the elevator this morning, and I said, boy, the students were great last night, weren't they? And she said, yeah, they were unplugged. And that was a good thing. The Dream Scholars Program is a student engagement and professional development opportunity for 6 students from active Achieving the Dream institutions. I hope by now you've visited the ATD YouTube channel to see their video stories. And today, the students will come to the stage and share with us their conference experience and offer their own special insights on how we can collectively move the community college reform movement forward. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Joy Hardiman, Emerita Faculty of the Evergreen State College, who's been with the scholars all week, to the stage, and she'll be facilitating the panel.
Good morning. Oh, no, 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 no. They've been working much too hard for you to be so low energy. Let's try this one more time. Good morning. Good morning. All right, because we've got to give them energy. We've got to give them love. All right. I am proud to introduce the 2017 Dream Scholar portion of this program this morning. The Dream Scholars have been active participants at Dream, serving as student responders, analyzing opportunities and challenges of institutional change efforts from their lens as community college students. They all work together to write I Am poems based on Linda Christian's schematic. People have asked me about that, so if you just Google I Am From or Linda Christian, you will hear the background, the context, and the process of the work that they did to assemble their lives in poetic form. All week, students have been engaged in inquiry-based learning, attending conference programs, gaining insider knowledge on what it takes for students to succeed. On Tuesday, they participated in an all-day team-building orientation where they had the opportunity to share their stories with Dr. Karen Stow and to hear about her leadership experiences. They also went on a field trip to Salesforce, the world's #1 cloud-based customer relations management platform based in San Francisco. Salesforce Employees Engagement Group arranged a special tour and intimate Q&A session with the scholars where Salesforce employees, some of them who were community college graduates, swapped stories on the trajectories that have led them to their careers and shared their insights on workplace issues, including unconscious bias. This morning, the students are here to share their learning with you. So please join me in honoring these magnificent human beings who have been so passionate about their learning. Okay, here we go. All right, please remind us about the name of your college and what your interests are and what you have learned from your experiences here this week. Can we start with you, Mac?
Good morning, everyone. My name is McDonald Taylor Jr. I am a paralegal student at Delaware County Community College of Media, PA, and I am just amazed at the diversity in this room and all the work that goes behind to make students like us happen. The most engaging thing that I've learned at this conference was Mr. Dobson on Tuesday night. He said, a true leader cannot lead without seeing the reality. And if you think about that, you can take that at the student level, the professor level, and the administrative level. And it really inspired me. You know, as a student, I had to lead my success and partner with those to help me get to the next level. A professor has to lead their classroom, and it doesn't matter, as Tia McNair said, whether they're adjunct, part-time, full-time. It has no bearing on how they lead their classroom. So those were the two most profound things, and then just to visit the different exhibits and hear a lot of talk about the poverty and different innovation ideas that are going on to help homelessness and hunger at the college level. And I would just encourage everybody to remember, your community college, the first word is community. And you can't have a successful college without the community. So partner with your community. Did I answer that right?
Excellent. Yeah, that was great. That was great. That was great. I know.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rakay Wright. I attend the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh. I major in engineering technology, mechanical, and my passion has always been my education because, as I said in my I Am From poem, I was raised by a single mom. And I have 5 other siblings, so I saw how my mom struggled to raise all of us and getting my younger brothers up in the morning. And like my oldest sibling is 26 and my youngest is 7. So, you know, she has to get them up in the morning, get them ready for school. And I saw, you know, what she had to go through. So I knew that with my education that would be my pathway for a better life. So that's why my education has always been important. So through me being a member of Phi Theta Kappa and being co-president, I wanted to use my position and help motivate other students to also want to achieve academic success. And some of the things that I've learned here was at the concurrent session on tackling transfers, because I am going to be graduating this semester, and I do hope to transfer this fall, on the tackling transfers on how to improve success for students seeking a bachelor's degree. It's really important to make sure that if you have a student that is planning on transferring to another institution, that whatever classes that they take, that the next institution will take those classes. I know a lot of students, you know, they'll take classes and then they'll say, oh, well, I took a bunch of classes that the school's not going to accept, so they're like, oh, well, I wasted my money. But I can see 2 other sides, because I spoke to other students who are like, well, they're not going to say it as, you know, I wasted money. They just take it as, well, it's just some more knowledge that I took up under my belt. But then there's other students who are like, well, no, I wasted my money because, you know, a lot of us are, you know, going through financial situations, so it's like you don't want to spend money for those extra classes if you really didn't need it. But that is something that I felt that was really important to make sure that students who are transferring, they make sure that they go see a transfer counselor and that those classes will transfer to the next institution. So.
Hi, everyone. I'm kind of happy I wasn't the first one to talk this time. Yay for me. As you all know, I'm Yolanda Centeno. I'm a student ambassador coordinator at the Columbus State Community College in Ohio. My passion is to raise awareness for deferred action students, the resources that are out there on different campuses. And my passion came from my own barriers that I had to overcome as a deferred action student. And I see that a lot of colleges are in different areas, so you just have to look where your school is at and go from there. Like I said, where I come from, we're in the starting stage, but we want to do something about it. We want to help students know that there are resources there for them, that it's not easy and sometimes it's not clear, but if you go out and look for them, change can be made. That's all I have to say.
Hello? Hello? Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Sun. I graduated from Onondaga Community College in last winter in Syracuse, New York. And my passion is learning, but not just learning, but it's also giving people supportive, like a helping hand that needs it, and showing them that anything is possible, because for me, I didn't go back to school. Someone didn't ask me to go back to school or help me. I have family, but my parents are not from here, so they wouldn't understand to push me. There's a different type of push that I was looking for, but I never had that. So I was lucky enough to motivate myself to go back to school and make a change. And also, after going through all that, I wanted to create a program where I could be a part of other students' lives and see what they're going through. So during my time at the school, I created a program. It was a scholar-to-scholar peer mentoring program where us Phi Theta Kappa members will partner up with incoming students, or the term that we don't like to use is students at risk. So the program wasn't about for them to ask questions to us and we have an answer. It was more than that. It was about being connected and being engaged in their life and to see what's going on, because we all come from different backgrounds and we all have different stories that we want to give. And that was the point of the program. And the program is still running today at our campus while I'm gone, sadly. And what I learned from here today was that during the preliminary session yesterday, engaging faculty as leaders and stuff, that's important. Not just, faculty members or, professors, it's including students also. I don't look at a student that's at risk, a student at risk. I look at them as just another student that needs guidance, and I also need guidance also. So we learn from each other. It's not about, labeling somebody. It's all come together. It doesn't make you better than one another. You're a professor, teacher, adjunct, whatever, but we all come together. We want one thing, and that's, becoming successful. And you guys paved that way for us, because you guys are here today to show us and give us guidance that what we need as us students and stuff. So, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Enrique Sepulveda from Miami-Dade College, and I am the Student Government Association of the Wolfson campus, and I'm majoring in political science with aspirations to pursue a master's in public administration. And boy, have I come a long way. And first and foremost, it's an honor to even be here with you all, because you all are our champions. And that really means a lot to me, because what I'm most passionate about is to stand as a beacon of hope for those who are following in my footsteps. And I come from being considered a minority student, an at-risk student, and overcoming a homeless situation. But being that beacon of hope and holding open that door of opportunity to allow those students to succeed. Because without our help, there truly is no hope for the future of this country, and it does start at our community colleges because we are the future of education. So, again, I just really wanted to thank you all for allowing us the time to be here. It's been a tremendous experience, so.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for my throat, but my name's Jesus. I'm from Cuyamaca College. It's in San Diego. Something that really drove me to be here is the equity aspect of this. It's really always been a passion of mine. My goal in life is to leave this world a better place than I received it or came into it. And it was interesting in so many of these sessions to see the topics of like microaggressions, lack of representation, intersectionality, and just like the strive from so many campuses and administration to like really bring those issues to light and find ways to improve them and or diminish them. It was really inspiring. Thank you so much for everything.
Perhaps you could share with the audience a piece of advice that you would have for them after having gone through this week, gone to the workshops, listened, reflected. What would you like to say to the audience? Matt, why don't you do that? And also share with them what your passion is, because I don't think you got a chance to do that the first time around.
Okay.
Okay.
You're always picking on me, Dr. J.
Hey, what can I say? What can I say?
It's been a lot to encompass in a short amount of time. But one thing that was said yesterday by Mr. Covey in the plenary session was about trust. And, you heard my story. And I remember the day when I went to Delaware County Community College. I went to the workforce development office because I was unemployed and I have a family I needed to feed. And I said, well, I would like paralegal. I think that would give me a foundation that I could further help those reentering society. And the response wasn't what I thought it would be. Oh, you have to have a degree to get the certificate. And it just kind of broke my heart. But when I called and spoke to the program director, she was like, well, we have an associate's program. Why don't you come to my orientation? And I said, okay. So when I went to the orientation, now, most people, when they have a felony conviction, are embarrassed by it. Now, let me clarify. I am not proud of my past mistakes, but I refuse to let those mistakes stop my growth. I got caught. So, thank you. So, at that orientation, and I'm going to acknowledge her, Professor Keely Mitchell, because she created that trusting atmosphere where I could be open to tell my story, not to say, woe is me, so to give her the information she needed to help me be successful. So to start that partnership, because none of us could be here without the partnership of a professor, a program director, a dean, a provost. It all works together. Let me refer to my notes. Mr. Millerin talked about the other day about the data. And early in my career, I worked in healthcare, and I saw how data changed the healthcare industry to a whole nother level. Now, data doesn't tell the whole story. Data is not going to tell the personal aspect to every student, but it will give you an opportunity to develop ways to have that trusting relationship, how to be able to approach those students that, from a data perspective, may have an issue. I don't want to say underserved, I don't want to say at risk, because situations in life happen. And in closing, what I would say is, at Salesforce, it was a very meaningful, open, and I would say very frank conversation. And Mr. Torres, who was a senior VP, he said something, and it really got me at my heart. He said, how can the first people to come into America be the last. And he shared with us that 2 to 3% of their 25,000 member workforce is African American or Hispanic. And so I encourage all of you to keep your doors of diversity open. Know your students' story, and no matter what their past is, don't look at their past, look at their future.
All right, all right. I love it. I love it.
One thing I would like to say is that it's important for us to accept and welcome everybody with open arms, no matter where we come from. Because there's a lot of students out there, like Yolanda said, deferred action and everything like that, or whether you're, LGBT community, you should always accept everyone, no matter who they are, where they come from, because I believe that if we work together, then we can succeed together. So that's all.
Well, throughout the conference, I have learned a lot. I'm very happy to be here, but before I continue saying everything that I have learned, I would like to say that I have had to explain to my fellow students and other people that I have met what deferred action is, and if you don't know, which is understandable, just find out, do the research. I use the word a lot, assuming that everyone knows, but it's understandable. I don't know everything that's within the LGBTQ community, but I get research and I'll learn, and it's just a way for me to know that I don't know it all, and I have space for improvement. Okay, now what I have learned. I've learned a lot, like I said, but one of the things that really stood out to me was the importance of trust between faculty and students. It's important to foster a community where students can feel safe to share their identities, to be able to open up to their professors, faculty members, counselors, advisors on the problems and issues that they're going through. But one experience that I would have never had back at home in Columbus is the visit that we had to Salesforce, where I got to meet a deferred action employee that was once a student, which is amazing. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. One advice that I'll probably give to you guys is listen to your students' stories. Be engaged and connect with all your students. Like they said, no matter where they came from, no matter who they are or what they've been through, just listen to their stories. We all go through something in our lives and stuff, but at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, is to be successful. And I'm pretty sure you guys want to see that from us. And, students come in all the time to community college, at risk with something. It's not just, academic stuff, it's outside stuff. So you have to prepare for that and just adapt and to make change for us. And we'll do the same for you guys. And you guys talk about trust the other day, and that's important too, because it's not just you help us for one semester and just let us go. It's being there for the whole time at the college, being connective and, showing us that we didn't have you for one semester and that's it. I was lucky enough to have professors at my college that I've been connected with them since my whole career there. And, that's what students need. They need to feel more than just students. It's more like a family when it comes to community college, and that's what I encourage you all to do, is just be connect and listen, because it doesn't get any real than this. So, thank you.
Something that I'd like to share with you all is the fact that I have personally defied all odds and statistics that were showed by David Dodson. And, I don't mean to brag about that, but I have come a long way. So I'd just like to share with you all to embrace the data that you collect, but also understand that for every digit, there is a story behind it. So, I started my senior year in high school with a .8 GPA. The statistics would have showed that I would have never persisted into college. I was never involved, but when I started at Miami-Dade College and I started receiving exposure as a student ambassador, joining SGA, which is a Student Government Association, it helped with my professional development. And because of that, I am the person I am today. So, I've come a long way. And not only that, but also embrace an open resource education. And I can also give you another example on that. And that's because, when I took college algebra, Mac 1105, I bought the book, and I was in the math lab for tutoring and making sure that I complete all my homework. But I passed that class with a C. And as a STEM major, at the time, when I went on to pursue my next math level, I decided to take pre-calculus and trigonometry in the same course. And in that course, I decided not to buy the book because in Mac 1105, I never needed it because I had those resources at Miami-Dade College, such as the math lab and peer tutoring, that I felt like I didn't need the book. So I went on to pass that class with a B. And I feel like, that says a lot. So just be ready to embrace that and learn better ways to interpret that data to reflect on the students of your community. Because again, for every single statistic, there is always a story behind it.
It's kind of hard to follow that one, but so there was a common sentiment I saw in many of my sessions, and it was the role of higher education. Is our institutions just solely for education? I think, as many students would argue, no. I'm a firm believer on the duality of institutions, particularly in community colleges, as both providers of education and social services, because without those services, disproportionately impacted students like myself and many others won't be able to achieve the dream. And it's just, I want colleges to embrace that. There's been discussion, and I'm not gonna point people out, but that perhaps this isn't like the role of us, maybe it's like the county or like the state, but in order to really ensure equity on your campus, you have to ensure that all these services, pathways, structures are there for your students to be able to achieve the fullest potential on your campus. And that's what I wanted to touch on. Thank you.
All right, incredible insights. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. So we have 5 minutes. So just really quickly, can we go around one more time, and you have a last closing statement? Something you want to say that perhaps you didn't say, and you thought of So now's your chance, right, Mac?
All right. What I would say is, one of the comments I heard is that this session here was to really charge the practitioners. So what I would say to you in this climate that we're in is be encouraged. We know that you do not do this for the pay. So we know, and I mean that with all seriousness, I know that you do this because you're invested in seeing communities succeed. So if you ever doubt what you do and the importance of you do, go to the ATD YouTube channel and watch these stories and let that motivate you, because we couldn't sit here like this if it wasn't for the work that you do. Delaware County, I love you. That's all I have to.
So one other thing, or two other things that I liked when I watched a few of the sessions that I had attended since I've been here was, actually during the plenary session when Tia McNair had said, don't say at-risk students, say underserved students. And I like that because I've heard at-risk students being said a lot, and I understand what she meant by no one wants to be considered, an at-risk student. So I really felt that that was important. And also, when I attended the not in my workforce session with Dr. Eddie Moore, I thought that that was a really interesting session. I really liked how he said that you can be a good person, but structures can change you as well. And for his example was Brooklyn traffic can change you. So I thought that was really funny because I'm like, yeah, I get a little road rage as well when I'm running late to class in the morning. So I really like that as well. So I just wanted to say that.
For me, I just want to follow up with what Enrique had mentioned about data. I wanted to say that it is important to know the difference. In one of the bigger sessions, it was mentioned that students, you could look at a student's success if they took summer classes. So the way you look at data is important, but the way you analyze it, it's even more important. International students, undocumented students, and DACA students are not the same. For example, myself, I don't take summer classes, but I have a 3.8. That doesn't mean I'm not doing well. It just means I need to work during the summers to be able to pay for my next semesters. So just know the difference. Know your students so that you know how to better help them. Thank you.
Hello? Just- I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out today to listen to us. Thank you for your time. Thank you to Karen. And thank you for choosing me to be one of the scholars. And if you ask me about probably almost 3 years ago, would I be here or would I be doing? I probably would be doing nothing, probably be dead. So there's a lot of, not just me, but my story is not to be a hero or anything. It's just I'm a voice for these guys and the rest of the students that are struggling, and they're a voice for me also. So, like I said before, it doesn't get any realer than this. So thank you for everything. And thank you for my college for being here. Onondaga College, right there. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. Thank you.
As former President Ronald Reagan once said, if they can't see the light, make them feel the heat. And the reason I say that is because when I mentioned that I started with a 0.8 GPA and I wasn't involved in school, that was due to a lack of exposure to a better environment. Because, in my poem, I did state that, I'm from a Miami neighborhood where there was gunshots and teardrops everywhere I looked. And that's true. I remember walking into my backyard one day and, I encountered a dead body. So just understand that what it takes for a student like me to succeed is the exposure to a greater environment, and also drilling in some sort of work ethic through workforce, through internships, through capstone leadership developmental trainings. And these are all things that I have experienced at Miami-Dade College. So again, I'd love to thank Miami-Dade College for this opportunity and selecting me to be here, and also Dr. Stout and Achieving the Dream for giving us this opportunity. So thank you all. You guys are our champions.
With my closing remark, I just wanted to echo something that Dr. Moore said, and in a similar fashion, it's that being a good person isn't enough. We must understand that the systems that are in place weren't created to support all of us. They were created to support those who would fit in the majority, and the rest of us didn't really matter. And yes, we change those and we edit those, and I'm not blaming any of you. They were built far before any of you were born. But I just want you to understand, that understanding your student's story is paramount to understanding how you can help them and understanding your key role in deconstructing these systems that have oppressed us for far too long. And I want to just say thank you for all of you who came and attended. It shows support and it really motivates all of us. And it shows that where you start off isn't a determinant of where you end up. And I think I just want to say thank you. So thank you.
And I would like to, on behalf of all of us here, thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for your scholarship. And we want you to know that these students are not the exception. Someone said, oh, why are we always having people from leadership things? They're leaders because of what we have done. They're leaders because people have nurtured them. And so each one of them represents not just themselves, not just their colleges, but in fact, students who come behind them. And so even though there are 6, they are really representing 6,000. They are really representing 60,000. And so each student we have, if we nurture, if we understand that they are not nouns in terms of human being, that a human being is not a noun, a human being is a gerund. All right? That means a human is a person in the process of becoming a human. And they are gerunds in the process of becoming the very best they can be, moving from ordinary selves to extraordinary selves. And so we applaud them and we applaud you for your work. Can we do one more applause for them? Stand for them, yes. Yes, they deserve a standing ovation. No, you sit. You sit. They're standing for you. And one last thing. I hope you all will encourage your students to join the Dream Scholars next year. We look for student leaders who are interested in being active change agents in their campuses and who will benefit from this leadership development experience. We will be releasing a request for applications in the fall, so please contact ATD office for more information. And have a blessed life. Go out there and do good work, and if you can't do good work, at least don't do any harm, okay?
Excuse me, everyone. The scholars just wanted to take a minute to salute you. So please stay seated while we clap for you.
Well, Mac gave us some advice. Mac told us to be encouraged. Mac, we are encouraged. Join me again thanking the students. And Joy, thank you again for working with us and the students. And so now we turn to our featured speaker, Dr. Terrell Strayhorn. Dr. Strayhorn is a tenured full professor in the College of Education and Human Ecology's Department of Educational Studies at the Ohio State University, with a primary faculty appointment in the Higher Education and Student Affairs Graduate Program, one of the top 10 higher education programs in the country, according to U.S. News and World Report. He directs the Center for Higher Education Enterprise, a multi-million-dollar research and policy center founded by former Ohio State University President E. Gordon Gee, that focuses on one primary goal in higher education, and that's student success. He's authored several books, including frameworks for assessing learning and outcomes, evolving challenges of Black college students, and college students' sense of belonging. His topic today, equipping students for achieving their dream, an equity-minded conversation in critical times, could not come at a more important juncture for our colleges and our nation, and a great way for us to end the DREAM Conference. It's my great honor to introduce our plenary speaker, Dr. Terrell Strayhorn.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. Good morning. Please, a round of applause for that wonderful introduction. And before I get too far into all of the wonderful things I want to share and say, there are a couple of other thanks I want to offer. But before I do that, please, another round of applause for that wonderful panel with the students, to all of the students who are here. And I also know that, I was assisted and worked with several folks here at Achieving the Dream to plan for today and get prepared for the opportunity to share with each and every one of you this morning. So I do want to say special thanks to Karen Stout, also to Mayen Ireland, to the planning committee, to Diane Bosak, and to Samad Keys, and many, many others who I'm sure played a role in helping to coordinate everything. A round of applause for these wonderful folks who not only put together a really wonderful conference, but quite often dealt with my ridiculous schedule to try to figure out how we can make this work. So I'm delighted to be here. I, like most good speakers who prepare, or good instructors who prepare for class, or good faculty who prepare for their seminars, I have way more information to cover than I have time to do it. But I also know where I'm going and how to get there and what to do upon arrival. So if you just buckle down your seat, I'm going to take us on a little journey. I want to cover a couple of points this morning that I think will bring what you've covered here at the conference to ahead, but also, most importantly, sort of reinforce some of the messages, many of the messages that actually the students spoke about this morning. In many ways, they could have been your closing keynote, and you could have just clapped like you did, gave them a standing ovation, and we'd be done. But you have me here, and so I'm going to say a couple more things that I think will round out what I'm going to call the curriculum for this conference. So to me, I thought it was really important. First of all, when I got the invitation, I thought to myself, Achieving the Dream, how cool of a name. But it made me think about dreams. So I want to talk about that in the context of our work. And then I started thinking about equity, because much of my work is from that perspective, from that mindset. So I want to talk about dreams and equity in education, and what we should be thinking about in our work with and for students. And then, because it's the closing, I figured rather than come and depress you about the realities of society, or about the kinds of things that if you look at the news, if you really want to be sad, go look at the news. But I don't think my job is to make you sad. Rather, my job is to leave you inspired and motivated. So the third thing I want to do is say something that will get us all thinking about where we go next after being here at this wonderful conference. I'm going to do it in a way that will be my own. And so I'm going to move across a lot of different information over the course of my time with you. I'm going to point to data and reports and trends and stories, and who knows what else I'll use in order to make my point. If at any point in time there's something that I allude to that you want more information about, if you just shoot an email to this email address shown on the screen, chee@osu.edu. If you ask for a copy of the slides, or citation to one of the references in the talk, a member of our communications team at the Center for Higher Education and Enterprise can get that information to you. Now, if it's a really important question like, hey, Dr. Strayhorn, where'd you get that cool tie? Or how do you get your hair to stand up that tall? I'm going to have to handle those kind of technical questions myself. And so I won't be able to get to that email until I'm back in the center, probably at the beginning of next week. All right. Now, here's what we're going to do. You can follow myself. You can follow the center. That's a great way to keep in touch with our work on student success. But again, I'm going to highlight some of that in the talk this morning. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge those who helped prepare me for today and providing my clothes for this morning. So I like to tell folks all the time, it was really cool when I checked in to the hotel last night, and please don't get upset about this, I'm not bothered. When I checked into the hotel last night, the woman at the front desk asked me if I had a credit card, and I said, yeah, and I reached in my bag and I gave it to her, and she said, well, you can't use your parents' credit cards, they have to be here. And I thought, that is hilarious, I love that. And that's what happens to you all the time when you're the fun size. I was giving a talk at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, and at the end, before my talk, the administration planned for me to have a private session with students. So I talked to students about leadership and everything that students were talking about, all of that good wisdom, knowing your story and telling your story. And just before my main keynote, I turned to the students and said, we only have about 5 minutes left. Are there any burning questions you want me to answer? Anything from my talk you want me to reinforce? And a young man raised his hand. He said, I have a really important question, Dr. Strayhorn. Are you an adult? So, what I've learned is no matter how, this is the tallest I've ever been in my entire life. I'm really excited about my growth and development, but apparently it doesn't show up for people the way they expect. No matter what, that's why I wear such big hair, but no matter what, even a fun-sized guy, I have the fortunate pleasure of today standing on really tall work, insights shared from students over the years in my studies. So their stories, their insights from research and interviews, I hope will make up for what I lack in height. You'll get from their information the depth and richness of their stories. So a little bit of context. I told you when I got the invitation, I've heard of Achieving the Dream and even know folks at Achieving the Dream, but for some reason this compelled me this year to think about what is a dream? And a dream is something very interesting. One, a dream is a series of thoughts. This has a mind of its own. So let me take that back. A series of thoughts, images or sensations occurring in the mind of a person. Interestingly, if you look up the definition of the word dream, dreams occur usually during sleep. Sleep is in a particularly important state of being. Because if you think about when you're asleep, it's when we are asleep that our eyes are shut. It's when we're asleep or asleep that we're in this unconscious state where we are unconscious of our surroundings. We are unaware of barriers, unaware of hindrances and the limits. And in fact, that's why we can dream, because we are asleep. All of a sudden, it opens up the possibility of anything happening. My first instance where I experienced sleep or dream during the daytime, I remember when I was growing up, one of the folks who helped raise me was my mom's mom, my maternal grandmother. I called her Ma. Ma was a choir director. And I remember being at her house in Trenton, North Carolina one time in her kitchen eating grits with no butter, just like I love it. And my grandmother was over at her kitchen making the rest of the breakfast, pancakes and bacon and all of this, and her phone rang and she said, hey, Rel, my name is Terrell. She just cut off the tur and made me Rel. We're all about abbreviating names in our family. And so she said, hey, Rel, get the phone for me, baby. And I picked up the phone, and this is what I remember. It was another adult. In my family growing up, when two adults were speaking, kids were not speaking. So I gave the phone to my grandmother, went back to my grits, and vanished right in the middle of the kitchen. My grandmother got on the phone, and the conversation went something like this. Good morning. And the person on the other end of the phone said something to her. She got off the phone. She looked frustrated. I turned to her. I said, Ma, are you okay? She said, honey, I will be in a moment. I said, you will be? How do you know? She said, because I need your help. I said, anything. She said, I need you to sing a song for me on Sunday at church. I said, anything but that. Because at that time in my life, I had not ever sang, had never been musical, never thought of myself as musical. My grandmother said, I need you to sing the song, This Little Light of Mine. I said, well, I don't even know that song. And she said, well, I'm a choir director, and you know that I teach people songs, and I'm going to teach you the song, and you're going to sing it. I said, but what if I don't want to sing it? She said, you're going to sing it because you're in my house. Now, if you don't want to sing it, you can get out of my house, but at 6 years old, it's really hard to get out of adults' homes. Before you know it, my grandmother taught me something that anyone here who knows about psychology. In psychology, there's a construct called self-efficacy. It is individuals' confidence in their ability to complete a task in a particular domain. There are 3 levers for increasing confidence, something that we can all use individually and collectively to equip our students to achieve their own dreams. First lever for increasing self-efficacy is verbal persuasion. Simply telling a student they can pass math, they are more likely to pass it. Simply telling a student they can graduate from your institution, they're more likely to graduate. Secondly, vicarious experiences, watching other people do it. And you heard it in the stories of students who talked about what it was like to see someone who was once a DACA student who then went on to a certain particular job or an occupation. Just simply seeing other people do something motivates us to do it. Vicarious experiences. And then third and finally, mastery experiences. That is equipping ourselves by sharpening our skills and practicing doing things on our own. We can then increase our confidence to complete skills. Well, my grandmother's not a psychologist. She's never even read a journal article about psychology or written a book about it. But turns out she knows something about self-efficacy, because while sitting in her kitchen watching me eat my grits, she says, "Rel, you're going to sing this song and you can do well at singing this song. I know you can do it, baby." Verbal persuasion. She said, and here's how the song goes. And she gave me the words and then she sang it. Vicarious experiences. Then she said, "It's your turn. Now you sing it." And like most stubborn 6-year-olds who don't want to do what their grandparents tell them to do, I started singing the song, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." Whoa, this, went through the whole thing. At the end of it, my grandmother said, "You sound terrible. But you could sound better if you put your heart in it. Why don't you just close your eyes and just sing it?" Well, I didn't, folks. In fact, what I did, I closed my eyes and prayed and said, "God, please let her church be closed down on Sunday so that we don't have to sing this song." Sure enough, I woke up Sunday alive, went to church. The church was still standing. My grandmother called the choir up. She motioned for the director, the piano player, to play the song, and sure enough, there it is. It sounded like the song she told me to sing. My grandmother called me over. I'm like, "No, I don't want to do it." She calls me over. I'm like, "No, please, I don't want to do it." She says, "Get over here." And before you know it, I'm up on the stage. Standing by my grandmother, close to her, proximity, close to her. Remember that, close to my grandmother who's directing the choir. And I tell her I can't do it. And I do what most 6-year-olds who lack confidence and preparation for the moment would do. I broke down crying. The cool thing about crying on a stage when you're 6 years old is everyone stands up and claps and says, "Oh, that was so good," right? I thought about doing that this morning for the keynote, but I bet you wouldn't stand up and say, "Wow, that was beautiful. He just cried," right? So I stood there, I cried, everyone stood up. I said, "Well, they're standing and clapping, so my work is done." I turn around and get ready to leave. My grandmother pulls me back, keeps me close, and says, "Baby, close your eyes and sing for Mama." If she had said sing for Snoopy, I would still be there today. If she had told me to keep my eyes open, I still would not have sang the song, because I would have been looking at everyone, looking at me, waiting for something. But when we close our eyes and enter into the state where we are unconscious of our surroundings, it opens up possibilities. A new possible self, things that you can once thought you couldn't do, you can do all of a sudden, because you're now at this point where there is no barrier, there are no limits, there are no hesitations. And just like our students talked about this morning, my grandmother pushed me into a place where all of a sudden all I remember doing is closing my eyes, grabbing my blazer. This is probably the blazer I had when I was 6 years old anyway. And I remember saying, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." I remember stopping and opening my eyes, and everyone was standing, and my grandmother said, "Do another verse." And I said, "You didn't even teach me a second verse." Because that's what happens when we equip our students to dream. Things that were once impossible or that people told them they can't do, all of a sudden they can do. There are things that we know about higher education that equip us to help our students better. First of all, shown on the screen is just a summary of some of the statistics that represent higher education today. We know that there are 21 million college students in this country that are educated across 4,300 colleges and universities. Over half of those, two-year community colleges, where those are major access portals and a significant part of our higher education enterprise. We have over 1,000 online degree programs where students can stay and take their whole degree online. We also know that there are things about college students that we once thought were accurate or that we once thought were objective, that are now actually more subjective or irrelevant. Times have changed. In fact, I'm reminded of the great American novel by Charles Dickens called The Tale of Two Cities. It opens with that famous line, "We're living in the best of times, we were living in the worst of times." Shown on the screen are some reasons why this is the best of time in higher education. We've opened up access for many different segments of society. I'm not saying that we don't need more work on access, but I would say that if we're going to look at our access work, we've done far better there than on the success front. There are more women than men in higher education and more women than men on most college campuses. I love saying this because today is February 25th. It is Black History Month. Black History Month, which did not begin as a month, started February 1926 by Carter G. Woodson as Negro History Week. Black History Month that we are now celebrating is a time where we celebrate the contributions and the presence of African Americans in society. We have more African Americans in higher education than was once legal in this country's history. Yeah. So much so that a few weeks ago, I teach at Ohio State University a class to graduate students, and in the middle of my class, or beginning of my class, I told my students, this is Black History Month. What are you all doing to celebrate? And listen to their responses. And then I told them I'd like to have a moment of silence in honor of Black History Month because 50 years ago, I could not have been your professor. And with that mere admission, students were moved to tears and emotions. Before you know it, we ended up about the progress we've made with access. We have more LGBT students and faculty, staff in higher education than ever before. We have more first generation, we'll come back to that term, students than ever before. We have more immigrant and students who were not originally born in this country than ever before. So we have opened up access for lots of different groups in society. But not only have we opened up access, the goal of higher education is not just to open up access, not just to get students to come to our institution. I think the goal is not even just to get them to graduate, although I think that's a really important goal. Actually, the goal is the name of this organization. It is to get them to their dream. It is to equip them to do the very thing they came to higher education to do. And although we've opened up access, the last point on this slide reminds us that only a little bit more than half of students who enroll in higher education ever complete their degree. And that is for all students. Those rates are remarkably lower for specific student populations like men of color or women of color. Interestingly enough, a group that we've studied just recently at the Center for Higher Education Enterprise are foster youth, and there are 400,000 foster youth in this country. Every year, about 20,000 of them age out of the system. When you age out of the system, your social worker or caseworker will interview you in an exit interview, and one of the questions they ask youth as they age out of the system is, what's next for you? What's next in this course or this path to independent adult living? 87% of foster youth who age out of the system, upon aging out, say, higher education. I've got to go to a community college or a four-year school. I need some higher education, more education to equip me for adult independent living. Interestingly enough, although 87% of foster youth say, I need higher education, still today less than 9% of foster youth ever earn a college degree. So we have increased access, but not match that work with strategy and plans that also ensure student success. I think this is problematic because access without success is useless. What's the point of going to one of our great institutions if you're not going to graduate? I remember I was at Starbucks once. I met a student who had a sweatshirt on that had an institution's name on it. And so I turned to him, I said, did you graduate from that school? He said, no, but I went there for a semester. And I thought to myself, there's the problem. He got the sweatshirt, but not the degree. And the problem is, we know from research, decades of research, the return on the investment is significantly greater for those who collect the degree, not just the sweatshirt. So we have to increase, not just inspire students to go to college, not just open up the doors of opportunity for them to walk onto our campus, but most importantly, to collect their degree and then move on to their dream. So over the years, I've learned that a lot of different factors matter for student success. And when you look at these through a sort of innocuous lens, or just a transparent lens without any thought about equity, any thought about justice, when you look at these factors, you think, wow, here's a whole set of factors that are correlated with student success that we need to know something about. For instance, we have known for over 40, 50, 60 years of research that parental involvement is positively associated with student achievement in high school and in college. In other words, parents who are deeply involved in their students' education, those students tend to get better grades, tend to graduate at higher rates, tend to go on to college at higher rates. However, when you look at that through an equity lens, it calls to your attention that every single parent is not set up to be equally involved in their son or daughter's education. We live in a wonderful country that has a racist and a historic past, where there are still today some parents and grandparents and great-grandparents who did not have access to education. And if you have an elementary or middle school education as a parent, it's really hard to help your son or daughter with high school homework. So what do we do in this country? What do we do in higher education? What do we do as staff and professionals and administrators and educational leaders to fix that gap? It's also true that it's really hard to be invested or involved in your son or daughter's, nieces or nephews' education by checking their homework, talking to them about their school day, meeting with their teacher when you're working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And we've known for a long time that all of the things that we talk about, especially with student achievement and the factors that influence students' achievement, do not exist in a vacuum. In fact, most, if not all of them, are linked to historic, systemic, social injustices, structural racism, and poverty. Let me just give you 2 takes on a similar issue. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Born and raised in Virginia Beach, Virginia, to 2 lovely parents. And my mom and my dad, when they got married, my mom said to my dad, all right, so you owe me 3 things. First of all, a ring. Secondly, some kids, and then a home. A ring on my finger, some kids, and then a home. And my dad decided he'd just work through that list on his own, at his own pace. And so he first started with the ring. And then he gave her my brother and myself, so some kids. And somewhere down the road, my mom tells a story where she turns to my dad and says, I told you there were 3 things I wanted. You've given me 2 of them. Now it's time for the home. I need a home. And my mom and dad were living in an apartment at the time, struggling to make ends meet. My mom and dad decided they were going to start looking for a home. And if you've ever looked for a home, this might have been your process. They found a realtor who then identified, 400 homes for them to look at. And you only look at about 30 of those 400 homes, and that's even exhausting itself. And usually you just pick the one that you saw first anyway. So my mom and dad go off on this excursion with their realtor, and they tell the story that they had seen something like 20 homes in just 2 days. My mom was exhausted. My dad was exhausted. All homes started looking alike. Anyone who knows me knows that anytime I see a 7-Eleven, I respond and say, oh my gosh, there's a 7-Eleven. Why? Because I grew up across the street from a 7-Eleven. Why? Because as they looked at these 20 homes over 2 days, my mom was tired. She said to my dad, I need some coffee. They go into 7-Eleven to get coffee. They come out of the 7-Eleven and the realtor's there. My mom looks across the street and sees a home for sale. She turns to the realtor and says, that home is beautiful. Is that on the list? The realtor checks, and sure enough, it wasn't. She said, do you just want to walk over there and check it out? So they walk across the street, and before you know it, this is the home that they purchase. And as a result of that purchase, we're raised in that home. And as a result of that decision, which is quite arbitrary, that is stopping to that 7-Eleven, seeing a home that wasn't even on the list, but deciding to buy that home and raise their family in that home, me, my sister, and my brother all grew up and went to really, really great schools, Kempsville Elementary, Kempsville Middle, Kempsville High School. I remember in high school, before I became a professor, I thought this was true for everyone. In 12th grade, almost all of my teachers had a doctorate. Dr. Shin, physics, Dr. Turcano, chemistry, Dr. Mitchell, AP History, Dr. Pleasance, AP English. It wasn't until I became a professor that I realized most kids don't grow up in schools where that's the case. And so one day while reading about all this, I went to my mom and dad and said, you guys are genius. How did you know, oh my gosh, to pick that house so that you could raise us in it? And as a result, I would go to great schools and ultimately be set up to go to great college and then ultimately get my graduate degree and then write articles and books and then one day go to San Francisco, California and be the keynote speaker at Achieving the Dream. This is incredible. And my mom and dad said, are you kidding me? We had no idea. All we wanted was coffee. And that's the inequity, that we live in a great country that, quite frankly, I don't think has to strive to be great again. It's a great country. We live in a great country, a democracy. But regardless of all of that, we all know that so much of a kid's education and their preparation for our institutions is out of their control. It starts with where mom and dad or auntie and uncle, guardian decides to live, the schools they have access to. And then for most students, they get to our door. And I hope that we can now start thinking about equity. What can we do to help fill some of these gaps and support them to their degree? So some of these factors are those that are born out of and connected to structural racism. There are other factors related to student success that I've uncovered. One that's shown on the screen is sense of belonging. I think it's exciting because we have control over sense of belonging. We can facilitate and create environments where students feel a sense of belonging. So I wrote about belonging in 2012 in this book. And the essence of my work on belonging shows that everyone in here, everyone in society has two types of needs. We've known this for a long period of time. One, we have express needs. I just alluded to one of mine. My mom and dad love coffee. I was raised in their house. Now I love coffee. I need coffee in my life sometimes. It's an express need. I can tell you that. I need light when I'm doing work. These are things that I know I'm conscious of what I need, but we all also have latent needs. They are equally just as important as our express needs, but we're unconscious of the fact that we need them. Belonging for some students is an express need. I was at a campus in Florida giving a talk, and I met a first-generation Latina, brown curly hair, who said to me, Dr. Strayhorn, I've been here at this institution for a year. I've tried to join clubs and organizations. I'm looking for my tribe. I'm looking for my people, and I just have not been able to find it yet. That's an expressed need of belonging. But some students are not conscious of their need to belong, and they start expressing the symptoms. Things like, I want to change my major. I don't feel like I fit in this classroom. I don't feel like I fit in on this institution or at this institution. I don't see myself reflected in the environment. It doesn't sound like belonging because the student's not conscious that everyone needs to belong, and if they have this need, it's a latent need expressed through the symptoms. Symptoms like, I feel lonely, I feel alienated, I don't feel like my interests are shared by others, or I don't feel like my contributions are valued. We all have two types of needs. Belonging can operate as an express need or a latent need, but no matter what, everybody wants to belong. Now, in 2012, I wrote in the book that belonging is a shared faith. I like to say I wrote it in 2012, but I understood it in 2016. Because in 2016, I was at SUNY Binghamton giving a talk on campus, and just before I went in to give my talk or my lecture to a whole group of folks who worked in housing, I got an email on my phone, and this email is shown on the screen. You may not be able to see it, so I'll call it out for you. It's August 11th, and I got an email from a student in distress who starts their message off with, Dr. Strayhorn, can I move in a day early? And I thought to myself, wait, what? I don't work in residence life. I don't work in housing. Move in where? Are they talking about on campus or moving into my house? What's going on here? So before you know it, like most of us who are busy and confused by these kinds of messages, I quickly wrote back to the student, help me understand what you're referring to. Move in where? Because my house is not open to people right now, right? So here it is. And then I started agonizing, like, what is this message? Who is it to? Was it really intended for me? And then I look at the date, August 11th. I pause for a moment. August 11th, 2016. Move-in date. Why in the world would a student be writing me, who's never worked in housing or res life and certainly don't control these kind of decisions, about moving in early? And I thought to myself, oh, they must be confused. I mean, really confused to write me. And then I think about the date. Who in the world would be really confused about moving in somewhere around August 11th. And then it dawned on me, this might be a first-year student. And I started thinking back to the first year of college. How many of you in here remember or have worked with students who can remind you that the first year of college is daunting, it's scary, it's complicated for all students, no matter where you are, whether it's a residential college or a non-residential college, a 2-year school or a 4-year school. The first year of college poses all sorts of questions and complications to students. So before you know it, I thought, this is not how I should have responded. I should have responded differently. So I responded with this message, and I wrote to the student, okay, first of all, congratulations on being admitted to Ohio State. I'm not responsible for these kind of decisions, but I know people who are. Have you contacted anyone in residence life or in housing? He writes back and gives me the name of 3 people. One person who does not work at Ohio State. They were incarcerated in the state of Ohio, but I don't think you want to ask them things about moving in. 2 people who work at Ohio State, but it turns out they're not, they don't work in residence life or they don't work in housing. I respond to his note and say, I'm not sure who these folks are, but I do know that the 10 to 12 people who I'm copying on this note do work in housing and residence life, and I'm asking one of them to reach out and to help you with this problem. And before you know it, I go to give my talk, I get back from my talk, I check my phone, and the student whose name is Richard writes back and says, Dr. Strayhorn, thanks for your help. I got the answer I needed. I can move in early. My mom is so happy, and blah, 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 blah. And I wrote back to Richard and said, hey, Richard, I got one more question for you. Where did you get my name? Is my name like on some bathroom wall that's like, if you have a question, just contact Strayhorn? And he writes back and he says, oh no, remember, belonging is a shared faith. And I've struggled to ask students, like, shared faith, faith in what? And they say, in you, higher education. And I start wondering, where did you start picking up messages from us about what you could believe about us? And they start saying things about, like, our websites. When our websites say, you belong here, they enter our campus thinking that they do belong there. When we tell them at orientation, you can be successful here. In 4 years, we look forward to walking across this stage, or in 2 years, walking across this stage, or in 4 years, when you transfer to another school, or even if it's a student who's not seeking a degree, at the end of this course, you're going to be successful. They believe us. Shared faith. That our words matter, that our websites matter, that our materials and brochures that sometimes include diverse faces reflect the reality of their experience at our institution. Before you know it, I wrote to Richard and said, Richard, where'd you get my name? He said, that's easy. I remember you because when me and my family came to visit Ohio State during one of the visitation weekends, you were the keynote speaker. And at the end of your talk, you said, if there's ever any opportunity for me to be of help to you, please do not hesitate to contact me. And it reminded me that belonging is a shared faith, and that our words do matter, and that even when we don't think about it, they're listening to us. And that every single word, every single piece of advice starts to cultivate, nurture that dream. And that nothing can eclipse a dream more than one of us failing to do what we promised to do. One of us not supporting them to their goals. And us not even knowing them or their stories, as students talked about, well enough to know what are their goals. It should be their dream, not our dream. And before you know it, it compelled me to start thinking about what I've been writing about with belonging, that students want to know and families want to know that we can be trusted. Now, if you've ever heard me tell this story, it's one that occurred in my personal life. So I've talked about theory, I've talked about belonging. I didn't write about this in the book because it happened afterward. But I have a God family. And a God family is for, people don't always know what a God family is. A God family is, when I moved to Columbus, Ohio, I don't have biological family there. I know no one biologically who's related to me there. But I went to a church. I'm a man of faith. That's just my own narrative, my own story. Church has always been that animating force for me growing up. So when I moved to Columbus, the first thing, I moved to Columbus because I had a job first, and then I found a church. And then once I found a church, I went there, and the church mother, who's a sweet woman, has these daughters. And before you know it, she said to me, she walks up to me, she says, little boy, and again, there it is, right? She says, you're going to be my new son. I said, that's great. I would love to be your son because I don't have family here. Before you know it, I have this God family full of my godmother, her daughters who are between the ages of 45 and 55. And just recently, my godmom's mom, my god grandmother, who was 95, just recently deceased, died. My god sister, one of them has a son. Her son calls me uncle. He got into the University of Dayton. I told my god sister, I said, oh my gosh, can you believe Justin got into the University of Dayton? She said, he did? I said, why didn't he tell you first, right? Because it turns out my nephew was excited to tell me. You know why? Because he said, I told you first because you're a professor. And I just need you to tell me, like, is this good that I got in? And should I go, right? The things that we can do when we're in these positions are powerful. We can help nurture. If we just get to the point where we realize that the power we have is that we can equip students to achieve their dream. That sometimes students will come to us before they go to other people because of the seat you sit in. The power you have as an educator, as an academic leader is tremendous. So I talked to my god sister and say, yeah, he should go to college. I'm going to tell him he should go to college. My god sister was so proud of her son. She said, my goodness, he's going to college. I didn't even think he would get out of high school. And before you know it, here it is. She's going to have a college student. She says, hey, can we go to the store? I want to get something for him just to let him know that mommy loves him. He always says that I'm so hard on him and that mommy, you never give me gifts anymore now that I'm an adult. And so she wanted to give her son a gift. So she said, can we go to the store? So we went to not Target, Walmart. Now, don't judge if my god sister went to Walmart, not Target. She's not concerned about being politically correct. She's worried about prices. And the prices at Walmart are lower than Target, so we go to Walmart because she wants to get her son something. So I'm at Walmart with my god sister, and she walks up to me and she says, hey, Terrell, I'm trying to get him something. Which of these 2 notebooks do you like? And I look at these notebooks, and I'm like, actually, none of those. In my head, not out loud, because I'm from the South, and that would be really rude to say to someone to their face. So I pick one of them arbitrarily. She throws them into the cart. She then goes over. Do you know what trapper keepers are? I don't even know why we still sell these, but she grabbed a couple of trapper keepers. She said, do you think he needs a trapper keeper from college? I'm like, I don't even think anyone needs a trapper keeper for anything, right? So she puts those back. Before you know it, she's going through all these school supplies, and I'm asking myself, to my god sister, what in the world are you doing? Why do you keep doing this? Let's go. It's time to go. And before you know it, she picks up these pens. She says, which of these pens do you like? And so I just pick one of those. I'm like, hey, we got to go. And she says, you know what? I'm taking so much time. Never mind. She throws them into the basket, and this is what she does. She goes, we can just leave. And when I hear that, I realize that I'm being impatient, so I turned to my god sister and said, no, go ahead, take your time. I just wanted to get some candy, and they have plenty of candy here. It's not going anywhere. I can wait. And she said, no, we can go because actually I came to the store because I wanted to get him something for college, and it wasn't until I got here that I realized, I don't know why I thought I could do that because I don't know anything about college. So what do you mean you don't know anything about college? She said, I've never been to college. I've never even been on a college campus. And I just realized I'm about to send my son to a place I've never been, and I don't know how to equip him for what he's about to do. And she started crying, and I held her, and while holding her, I was crying. She said, I made you cry. I said, no, you didn't make me cry. I should be crying. Because I write books about first-generation, low-income, historically underrepresented students and journal articles, and I give talks about them, and it turns out I don't get it. I don't get it because I'm so privileged. Everybody in here is privileged. Privilege operates this way. It blinds us to the realities of other people, to where we get so caught up trying to get to the candy or get to our next, and we forget that there are moms and dads and aunties and grandmas and Walmarts and Targets all over this country who are looking for one of us just to help decode some of this stuff to help them equip their student to achieve their dream. And it's when we can step outside of our privilege to share that knowledge with others, what I call cultural brokering or cultural navigation, that I think we start to equip students in ways that they can be successful, but most importantly, we demonstrate to people that we can be trusted with their students, and most importantly, that we care. So for me, all of this shows that belonging does matter, and that if we want to increase student success and nurture their dreams, one way we can do it is by helping them dream and contemplate the possibility of doing something they've never done before, by building campus environments where they feel supported and cared about, where they see themselves reflected in the environment, where they also see themselves successful. They see role models. They pick up messages from us that they can do it. That in the classroom, they're taught by faculty who have high expectations of all students, not just those who were set up to be college ready. I think it's also true that so much of what we do in higher education is exactly as my grandmother taught me when I was 6. It's to remind us that we as educators can help students dream when we realize that the purpose of education, and the Latin education comes from educare. It means to draw out the light that is within. And you saw it in the students this morning on the panel. Each and every one of them have a light in them. I want to close with an anecdote. Belonging is important. Students thrive and they succeed in campus environments where they feel as if they belong. They perform optimally in classrooms when they're taught by professors who have high expectations of them, who also draw on that light to make it part of the content, part of the video, part of the curriculum, part of the examples that they talk about in class, that allow students to draw from their own story, not necessarily change their story to match the stories of those around them, but to really stick with their own story. Speaking of stories, my grandmother, who helped raise me, was a master teacher. She was born October 6, 1925. I told you she lived in Trenton, North Carolina. She was a teacher, she was a singer, she was a mother. I've asked you a couple of questions. November 1st, 2013, I found myself in Virginia Beach, Virginia at P.F. Chang's. By a show of hands, how many of you in here know what P.F. Chang's is? All right, great. Almost everybody, a whole population. Well, my grandmother's from Trenton, North Carolina. In Trenton, North Carolina, they do not have P.F. Chang's. In Trenton, North Carolina, all they have is Piggly Wiggly. How many of you know what Piggly Wiggly is? Oh my gosh, still people know what Piggly Wiggly is. That's great. So my grandmother, who's in Virginia Beach, Virginia, goes to P.F. Chang's. She looks across the table. She says, Rel, I've never been to P.F. Chang's. What should I order to eat? I said, my favorite thing to eat is lemon chicken. She turns to the waiter and says, I'm going to have lemon chicken because my favorite grandson told me to have it. She said that in the presence of my brother and sister, so it was a good day for me from the very beginning. We had a great meal. We left. We went outside. We took selfies and groupies. Some of my favorite pictures with my grandmother come from November 1st, 2013. November 2nd, I got on a plane, went back to Columbus. November 3rd, they put her in her car, took her back to Trenton, North Carolina. I called her. She made it there safely. November 4th, I called, no answer. November 5th, I called, no answer. November 6th, 1 month after her 88th birthday, I called, no answer. Called my mom because that's her only child, and I said, Mom, we need to send someone over to check on Ma because I've called her 3 days in a row and she's not answering my phone calls. And of course, I'm the favorite grandson. She's gonna answer my calls if no one's. And my mom has a cousin, this is an educated audience, so I'm gonna brace myself, but my mom has a cousin who has a talent for getting into locked buildings. Don't judge, it's a skill, it's a skill. When used the right way, it might make, legal money, but my mom calls her gifted cousin to go check on my grandmother. Sure enough, he gets in her house despite the ADT alarm and finds my grandmother in her kitchen at the table, stooped over unconscious. Calls the paramedics. Paramedics are important, and many of you educate paramedics, and it was paramedics who went to my grandmother's house and found her, took her to the hospital. Called my mom and said, you should come check on your mother. She suffered an aneurysm, and at 88, there's not a whole lot we can do. My mom calls me and says, Rel, Ma has suffered an aneurysm. You should come and check on her. I got off the speaking circuit, left my class, and then went to North Carolina to see my grandmother. Whenever I was in the presence of my grandmother, she would always exude energy. She would say, hey, Rel, hey, honey, hey, baby. But this time I was preparing myself for the worst, so I didn't know if she was gonna greet me that way, so I got in the hallway outside the door, and then I jumped in the door and I said, hey, Ma. And the woman in the bed turned her head, looked at me, said nothing, turned away. I knew then my grandmother was already starting to leave us. I looked at my mom. I say I'm the fun size. My mom's the funner size. So I walked over to my tiny mom and I gave her a hug. Have you ever hugged someone who's on the verge of tears and they just lost it, broke down, and all the weight just fell? Hugged my mom and she just lost it. All of her weight is on me. I said, Mom, you're so tired. Go home. She said, I can't go home. I got to stay here to take care of my mother. I said, you don't have to take care of your mother because I'm here. She said, but you're not a nurse, baby. I'm a nurse. I said, I know. I'm a doctor. And my mom, sure enough, leaves, goes home, listens to the doctor, and before you know it, I do what every single person would do for people who help them get where they are, who help them achieve their dream. I took care of my grandmother. I washed her hair, cleaned up her messes, I changed her diaper. I told the nurses, please don't force her to eat if she doesn't want to eat. I told people visiting the room, shh, she's trying to sleep, and they say, well, she can't hear us anywhere. I'm like, shh, be quiet anyway. My grandmother's favorite singer was Shirley Caesar. I would play Shirley Caesar on my iPod for her. Normally, my grandmother would rock uncontrollably to Shirley Caesar, but this time, the woman in the bed just stayed motionless. That night, I went to bed, I held my grandmother's hand, I stayed close to her, just like she stayed close to me when I was 6 years old and afraid to sing in front of that church. I held her hand, the nurse came in and said, do you want a cot that you can lay on? I said, no, I'm gonna sit in this chair right beside my grandmother. She said, that chair is really uncomfortable, and I came to tell someone at the Dream Conference that sometimes we have to be willing to sit in uncomfortable seats so that someone else can experience comfort. Sometimes we are in these positions and have to be willing to experience discomfort so that our students can experience comfort while they pursue their dream. I sat there, drifted off to sleep, got up the next day, did it all over again, fell asleep. But November 19th, I never will forget it, 2013, I drifted off to sleep holding my grandmother's hand. I was asleep, unconscious. A state that made me unaware of my surroundings, and made her unaware of her surroundings. A state of being where there are no hindrances and there are no barriers, there are no limits, even for people who have suffered aneurysms at 88 years old. And though my grandmother had not talked in weeks, she did not know her daughter's name, she did not know the president of the United States, although I know she voted for Obama. After weeks of silence at November 19th, 2013, I was awakened out of my sleep in this chair by the most violent shaking of my grandmother's hand than I ever remember. I turned, looked at the hand, I looked at the clock, it said 1:17 a.m. Never will forget it, it's emblazoned in my mind. I turned my head, I looked at my grandmother, her eyes were wide open. I said, "Ma, are you okay?" She said, "Hey, Rail." I said, "You're speaking. You're coming back." So I'm pressing for the button to call the nurse, and the TV pops on. I'm still reaching back. And though my grandmother had never, ever said a word in that hospital, November 19th, 2013, at 1:17 a.m., while holding her hand, she took me back to when I was 7 years old, when she said to me, "Hey, Rail, let's sing my favorite song." And at 1:17 a.m., though visiting hours were over, my grandmother said, "Hey, Rail, let's sing my favorite song. There's a bright side somewhere. There's a bright side somewhere. Don't you give up until you find there's a bright side somewhere." And just like that, it was over. My last moment with my grandmother, doing what me and my grandmother had done my entire life, singing, while I held her hand and stayed close to her. Folks, when my grandmother was alive, the best place I ever wanted to be was at my grandmother's house. My grandmother's been dead for 3 years, and I have not gone to her house. But this past December, I thought to myself, when she was alive, I loved going to her house. Why in the world have I not been to her house in 3 years? Ma, I owe it to you to go to her house. And I went to her house in December, and as I approached her house, I remembered something. My grandmother has beautiful grass, but I don't love her grass. My grandmother has a beautiful home, but I don't like the building. My grandmother has a beautiful tree in her yard, but it was never the tree that drew me to the house. What drew me to the house was the person inside the house. And it reminded me the same thing happens in higher education. Students don't come to our campuses because they love our facilities. Students don't come to our campuses because they love our chairs. Students don't come to our campuses because we got the best hallways in all the buildings of the world. They come to our campuses because of each and every one of us. We make it the place to come back to. We make it the place to belong. Never forget that we have the power to help students achieve their dreams. Thank you.
Okay. So I have the I have to try to compose myself and close the conference. Dr. Strayhorn, thank you. So it's really hard to believe we're closing another terrific dream convening. And there are a few people that I want to thank. First, I want to thank the hotel staff and team behind the scenes from the hotel that worked really hard with a lot of people to try to make logistics strong. And then mostly, I want to thank the ATD team because planning for dreams starts the day after dream ends. And it continues all the way through, even through today. We're planning and trying to keep up to make the conference as relevant and up to date as we can. So those of you from Achieving the Dream, there's some in the back that are here. There's some here. Could you stand so we can recognize you for all that you did to build this conference? Next year's Dream is in Nashville, so I hope that you will be able to join us. And just in closing, just to reflect on a couple of things that we learned this morning, I want to thank Mac who told us with students that data doesn't tell the whole story, and don't look at the students' past, but instead look at their future. Yolanda, who told us that trust is so important, trust between a faculty member and a student. And she said, I just want to be in a place where I can be safe to share my identity. Enrique, who gave us kind of a shameless plug for the work we're doing in open education resources, but whose story about the support of the tutoring lab and tutoring and how important that was to supporting his success. And it wasn't the textbook. It was a lot more than that. Jesus, who said that we really need to stop fighting about what we are. We're not just higher education. We do indeed need to build the social support systems on our campuses to support success. We have to figure out a way to bring that duality into our campuses and into our missions. And thank you for encouraging us to embrace that. And Dr. Strayhorn, among many things that you said, when you said nothing can eclipse a dream more than not following through on one of your promises, very powerful. And it reminded me, early in my presidency at Montgomery County Community College, I came across a quote from Kay McClenny that was in a publication that was from 1996. I was carrying around all of my community college stuff in my office, and I was trying to find something to anchor a new strategic plan that we were getting ready to launch. And the strategic plan's name was Keeping Our Promise. And I found a quote that Kay had, and you'll recognize this, Kay. I see you in the back. And I paraphrased it a little bit, changed it up a little bit, and I want to read it because it's called Our Promise, and it was something that I read every year as part of opening convocation at Montgomery. And it's, give us you're gifted, you're tired, you're poor, you're employed, you're unemployed, you're first-generation college students, you're people with abilities and disabilities, you're academically prepared and underprepared, you're skilled and unskilled. Give us you're motivated and gifted, you're motivated but poorly gifted. You're gifted but poorly motivated. Give us all of your people in need of an even chance, a first chance, a second chance, or a last chance. Give us all these people, and we will move mountains to provide them with both a place and an opportunity to succeed. It's absolutely important that we leave here with that commitment to keep our promise. And Dr. Strayhorn, thank you for reminding us of that. Dream is convened. Have safe travels home. See you next year in Nashville.